Have you ever finished a book and thought, that was great? Then a week later, you can barely remember what it was about. I used to think I cracked the code, speed through summaries, use AI tools, and consume everything fast. And I did consume a lot, but I wasn't actually learning. I was just building a feeling of knowing. Let me show you what I mean. One fall morning, I'm driving to work, listening to How to Win Friends and Influence People on Audible. The leaves outside are golden, I've got my warm coffee in my hand, and I feel productive. Like I'm doing it right? 2 days later, I finished the whole book. I'm proud of myself, like I finished a book in 2 days. A week later though, I'm sitting in my office and I'm kind of reflecting on what I learned from the book, like a story, a quote, and my mind's just going blank. So I decided to listen again, thinking I just didn't pay enough attention. It feels better this time though, until it happens again. Something about that didn't make sense to me because I was doing everything right, reading, listening, learning, yet nothing was sticking. And the reason why turned out to be much deeper than I expected. We'll come back to that in a second. Because first, I want to show you why this happens to so many of us. I'm going to show you why learning that feels easy gets forgotten fast, and what to do instead so your reading actually sticks. Here's the problem. You're putting in the time to read, learn, to grow, but a lot of what you put in disappears. You might finish a book summary and feel like you've got it. You highlight pages, you take notes, and you think, I'm doing the work. But later, when you try to apply that insight or remember it during a conversation, you draw a blank. Why does this happen? Because the dominant pattern, especially in the self-education world, is easy learning. You skim the book, you listen to a podcast while doing something else, you use AI to summarize key ideas and move on. It feels efficient. It feels like progress. But here's the truth. Efficiency doesn't always equal effectiveness. The feeling of doing something might mislead you into thinking you've learned. In reality, you might have just built familiarity, not durable knowledge. And for the folks like you, readers, learners, people who genuinely care about growth, that's frustrating. Because you should be getting more out of all those books, podcasts, or summaries. You should be retaining more, using more, and growing more. At the same time, you might think, but I don't have time. Isn't reading summaries better than nothing? Or if I just skim, I can get through more books, and more books equals more growth, right? Those instincts make sense, but they miss a key detail. When we chase easy learning, we often skip the learning that sticks. And that's a hard trade. More content, but less lasting change. Let's get specific about what this actually costs you. Imagine finishing a self-help or a philosophy book. You highlight a dozen sentences, you feel inspired. For a day or two, you talk about it, you feel smarter. But then you hit a real situation where you could use that knowledge, and nothing comes. You freeze. The ideas are right there, but behind the glass. Meanwhile, you see others go deep. They remember more, connect ideas, and apply them naturally. And you wonder, am I doing something wrong? That feeling, that invisible gap between what you think you know and what you can actually use, that's the cost of easy learning. And it's exactly what I discovered that morning in my truck. But I didn't know it yet. So what actually works? I found 4 simple shifts that completely changed how much I retain. And none of them require more reading time. They just require reading differently. Here's the weirdly simple trick that changed everything for me. After I finish a chapter, I close the book and I ask myself, what were the 3 main ideas I just read? That's it. I don't open the book again, I just write them down from memory. Sometimes I speak them out loud like I'm explaining to a friend. And here's what's wild. Psychologists Henry Roediger and Jeffrey Karpik tested this in 2006. Students who did this simple recall exercise remembered way more a week later than students who just reread the material multiple times, even though rereading felt easier and more productive in the moment. The secret? Your brain doesn't actually store information when you're just looking at it. It stores information when you struggle to pull it back out. That little moment of wait, what was that concept called, is doing more for your memory than highlighting ever could. So after you read, close the book, write what you remember, and get it wrong if you need to. That's actually helping. Then check yourself. 5 minutes, that's all it takes. Okay, this one feels a little counterintuitive at first, but stick with me because the payoff is insane. Instead of reading everything in one big session, I break it up. I'll read a chapter on Monday, then on Wednesday, before I read anything new, I pull out my notes from Monday and try to remember what I learned, without looking first. Then I do it again the following Monday, and once more 2 weeks after that. Researchers like Nicholas Cepeda found that this spacing thing, letting yourself forget a little bit and then re-remembering, beats cramming every single time. When your brain has to work to pull the memory back, it gets stronger. If you never let it fade, it never has to strengthen. The crazy part, 4 10-minute sessions spread over 3 weeks will lock in more knowledge than one 90-minute marathon session. It's not more time, it's just smarter time. I use phone reminders for this. So Wednesday is recall Monday's chapter, next Monday, recall last week's ideas, and it takes less time than scrolling Instagram. And the difference in retention is honestly kind of ridiculous. Now, I'll also say that you can cram before a test, but cramming is not good for long-term knowledge. Just wanted to say that too. This one sounds weird, but completely changed how I read. Instead of finishing one entire book before starting another, I rotate between different topics. Monday, 1 chapter of self-help. Tuesday, 2 chapters of fiction. Wednesday, 1 philosophy essay. Thursday, back to the self-help book. I know, it feels wrong at first, like you're breaking your flow, but that's exactly the point. Nate Cornell and Robert Bjork studied this in 2008 and found that people who mixed up their learning remembered more and could actually apply what they learned better than people who stuck to one topic at a time. Why? Because when you switch topics, your brain has to work harder to figure out what's different between them. And that extra work creates deeper understanding. You start seeing patterns across books that you never notice if you read them separately. Like I was reading a business book about decision making and a fiction novel at the same time, and suddenly I started noticing how the protagonist's choices in the story mirrored the biases the business book was describing. That connection would have never happened if I'd read them months apart. So don't be afraid to have 3 or 4 books going at once. Just rotate between them. Your brain will thank you later. Now this next one is probably the most powerful if I'm being honest. After I finish reading, I open my notes app and write 3 quick things. A summary, so what did I just learn in my own words? A connection, how does this connect to something I'm already working on? And an application, what's one thing I'm going to try in the next 48 hours? Then, and this is key, 2 days later I go back to the note and add, did I actually try it? What happened? The Bjork Lab has done tons of research on this. And what they found is that when you force yourself to put ideas in your own words and connect them to your life, you're literally reorganizing the information in your brain. You're making it yours instead of just borrowing it from the author. And the follow-up is where the magic really happens, because that's when you figure out what actually works and what was just theory. This takes maybe 5 minutes after reading, but it saves you hours because you're not relearning the same stuff over and over. The knowledge is already integrated, and it shows up when you need it. And here's the exciting part. If you start using retrieval, spacing, interleaving, and reflection, you'll notice something almost magical happen. Ideas that used to slip away start sticking. Concepts begin to feel like they're belonging to you, insights start connecting in ways you didn't expect, and reading transforms from a task into a tool for real growth. You'll begin to see patterns, make connections, and apply what you've read in your own life. But here's the twist that most people don't realize. Just because you can remember something doesn't mean you'll actually use it. You might have built stronger memory, but how do you take that knowledge off the page and make it a skill, a habit, or a decision that changes what you do? That's the hidden step almost no one talks about, and it's exactly what I'm going to show you in this next video. Keep learning, keep growing, keep going, and I'll see you in the next one.